City Planning and Zoning Commission for April 17th, 2024. It's 6 o'clock p.m. Still, yeah, close enough. Our first order of business is to call to order the public hearing for comments on a conditional use permit to allow construction, sales, and service at 1141 West, 299 South, Suite C, Parowan, Utah, and that, for reference, is parcel number A-502-0005-0000. With that, the public hearing is open. Do we have any comments, questions from members of the public? It's a lot of clamor. All right, last call, public comment. Okay, at this point, I'll accept a motion to close this public hearing.
We're gonna do B, or do we have to?
Well,
do one?
well, let me address B,
Well-
the applicant has requested that we table Part B until May 1st, meaning we will have to, repost that for another public hearing on May 1st, and then we'll tackle that one there.
Okay, that being said, I would, make a motion to close the public hearing,
Close the public hearing, tabling item B
tabling item B
until May 1st.
till May 1st.
Do I have a second?
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you. And then we need one more motion to open the regular planning and zoning.
I make a motion to open our planning and zoning meeting for April 17th, 2024.
Do I have a second?
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Aye. The ayes have it. Thank you. Okay, first item in our regular meeting, are there any conflicts of interest with items on the agenda?
I have none.
No.
I have none. Thank you. All right, we're back to the consideration or discussion about conditional use permit to allow construction, sales, and service at 1141 West, 299 South, Suite C, Parowan, Utah, and again, parcel number A-502-0005-0000. This is our opportunity for questions, discussions regarding this. Judy, can you bring up the photos?
This is the one we discussed with the home sales, correct?
No,
No, this is
no,
for,
this is the construction rental.
are you gonna go into why you nade?
Oh, what?
Why you nade?
That's not the right address.
You said no when we voted on this?
No,
Oh,
we've passed it.
okay.
It's code now.
That
it's
it?
allowed.
This is it. Okay. See, this is their
Oh.
building.
Oh, yeah, I got that.
Thanks.
So I'm a little confused.
Ty, would you like to speak to this, please?
Why would they?
So we decided to give you kind of what we wanna do with the machines. You know, put the smaller machines up front, so it's still visible, the building, everything from the road, not blocking, view of the building or people leaving or coming from the building. The repair we put back by the back wall behind the building. That'll be customers' machines coming in, if we have any. And hopefully, all the machines what we have showing right there, they're out on rent or being sold, so we won't have that many here. But we're
And where are those? Which one?
It's, if you look at the square boxes,
Mhm.
number 2, 1,
Yeah.
3. Number 2's how many machines are in it, one of the machines,
Oh, I see.
3. So that's what we're looking at, how many machines we'll have there. And then, if any other machines what customers need, we could bring them in and move those around to fit customer needs.
Now, is there room on that that's the west side of that property?
The west side, Yeah,
Where
there's-
you're lining up your...
that's from the building to the edge of the property, if I remember right, when I Google mapped it, it's like 80 feet from the edge of the building to the edge of the property
So
line.
that's plenty for you to work around to get
Yeah.
equipment in and out of there without,
Yeah, 'cause most of the
infringing on the lot next door?
yeah, most of the machines are only gonna be, 10 feet or less
Okay.
wide.
You plan on building a wall between those two properties?
I did not, and we asked about putting a fence around, and the, landowner does not want a fence on his property. So we're just gonna leave it like that, and that's why we left it kinda open between the building and the equipment, so trucks can still drive around the building and have access all the way around.
And trucks are gonna drive all the way around the building where?
Between the square blocks and the building,
Okay.
right, that gap between, there'll be enough room for a truck to fit through there.
Okay.
When I was there, before those shipping containers showed up, there was a delivery truck that actually made that turn, and there was still plenty of room from the property line over,
Yeah.
so I could put machines and that there.
Okay.
Yeah. So the shipping containers are obviously getting moved, right?
Far as he told me they were only gonna be there 2 weeks, so I could start moving things in, and it's been longer.
Keith? Okay.
That's what I was gonna find out, so I can
Yeah.
bring machines in.
So one of my primary concerns is that those shipping containers are illegally placed. There's not a license or a permit for those. They've been asked to be moved and they haven't been. And now we find ourselves at this juncture. It's my opinion that if we do decide to grant a conditional use permit tonight, that it will be contingent and not become effective until those are moved.
Even though they're not mine shipping containers?
That's right, and the reason for that is the conditional use permit runs with the land.
The land,
Even
okay.
though you are applying for it, it will be assigned to that parcel of land, and it stays with that land until it's revoked or rescinded.
Mm.
So, you can move on and build a new building somewhere and move out of town, that particular conditional use for that building and that parcel of land remains. And so it's a landowner issue more than it is a
tenant.
Rasmussen construction
Yeah,
issue. And
okay.
I'm sorry that
It's all right.
that it's that way, but.
Yeah, I was just checking.
Other questions, concerns from the commission? So what will your, hours of operation be? What's your intent?
8 to 5, normal business hours with no weekends. And,
Okay.
yeah,
You
So-
say normal weekends?
no weekends.
No weekends?
Yeah, Rasmussen equipment, that's family time. So
Okay.
they do not work weekends unless it's emergency.
So how do you see that working in the winter? So somebody's called you, say on Monday, and said, Tuesday morning, I wanna pick up a piece of equipment at 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
Are you gonna go out and fire that up at 7:30 to
Nope.
warm it up?
No, we don't fire it up until he actually shows up, and if he shows up at 8, we'll fire it up at 8.
And if he shows up at 7:45?
We wait until 8,
Okay,
yeah. 'Cause our company hours don't open up till 8.
all right, thank you.
Why do you have to wait?
Huh? 'Cause why did it have to wait? 'Cause our business hours from 8 to 5. So usually we'll just wait until 8 o'clock before you start any
Oh, I didn't
equipment up.
my drinks.
I think Larry's concern might have been noise factor for the
Yeah,
neighbors.
noise factor.
Oh, I was gonna say, lazy
Yeah.
or...
No, it's the noise, we see there's, well, there is a house
Yeah.
that is right on the back of that lot,
Oh, I,
that there's not a full-size wall behind it.
Got
It's
you.
about a 4-foot wall. So we're thinking of their, you know,
that's
private.
nice of you, yeah. Curious.
And with the new machines and new engines, you can't let them run more than 10 minutes anyway. Or
Is
it
that
ruins
right?
the engines.
That's why?
It ruins the engines, the emissions on them, the DEF systems. You're not supposed to allow your vehicles to run for more than 10 minutes, where it starts plugging up your EGR, then it'll start plugging up your filter, and then you're looking about $30,000 to replace it all,
I guess.
so.
Wow. So, yeah, so my concerns are, what I'm really looking at is, do we need to, apply conditions to this conditional use permit to mitigate things that we might reasonably expect? I mean, the company can change hands farther down the road, they still have a conditional use, another operator can move in there and run the same sort of a business, and the only rules that they're bound by are really the city noise ordinances and other city code, along with anything that we plug into the, restrictions that we might put into the conditional use permit. And I did have concerns about, well, still do have concerns about fence. I originally had thought, and probably my mistake, I thought that this was gonna be on the east end
On
of
the
these buildings.
use
And-
buildings, no, those are all
Yeah, that
done.
was,
And he just, on that same building on the east side, he just put that up for rent, where his business is.
well, and I was thinking farther down, the
Further east,
row of
yeah.
buildings farther east where there is no fence.
There's no fence, yeah.
And I was gonna go, that's not gonna work real well. So this fence in the rear being 4 feet, and I'll have to say, I haven't really gone and looked at that. Is it 4 feet for the entire length of the building?
You
or
can
just-
see right there where his shed is, and from the almost the tree line to that shed is just a small little brick fence. The rest of it's full height.
Okay,
You can almost see the break there, Larry,
Yeah.
yeah.
right about
Okay.
there where it breaks. But my question is, what is the likelihood of this to be developed? That's probably gonna be developed commercially, I would think,
Yeah.
It will.
so.
So the real question there is, you know, how do we feel about commercial development next to this, sort of a business? Is it gonna, if it's open, is it gonna limit what people might wanna do on that lot to the west? Or is it fully compatible with just about anything that might pop up? And if we think that it's gonna be a problem, now is the time to require some sort of a barrier or something on the, west side.
You mentioned that the landowner doesn't want that, though.
Landowner
Well-
was talking about, to me, he told me he was trying to see if they wanted to sell that land, and he wanted to build another building there,
I see.
so.
Yeah.
The same kind of building, the
That the other
dual
ones are,
commercial building that they have there?
yeah.
I would love to take that into account, but that's, if we're gonna do that, then,
On the main drive, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, Uh-huh.
then we'd probably be in a different business.
And then looking in a year, 'cause we signed a 1-year lease with option month to month. After that year is what we're doing is seeing if this is the best fit for us right there,
Mhm.
which so far it has been. 'Cause I've been to I've sold equipment in Panguitch and they're happy that we're in Parowan, not in Cedar. So, my company's looking at buying 5 acres and building a full dealership after that.
Uh-huh,
And that's what they wanna see is this the right spot?
Right fit.
Right.
yeah.
well, again, I see that, and again, the challenge for us is that this runs with the land, so
Yeah.
once you move out, we don't
Yep,
hand you your permit
no,
and say, carry that with you.
I think it's good. I don't see concerns with that.
I'm sorry, I didn't.
I said, I think it's good. I don't see concerns with that, like,
With the fence?
or anything. Yeah, no.
Okay.
I mean, it's zoned commercial,
Because,
so,
and I think I have
you
to
know.
agree, because it is zone commercial, it's, any commerce, you have to deal with what you deal with.
Yeah.
There's nobody gonna force a
Right.
guy to
yeah.
rent that spot or buy that spot.
And it's
Right.
undeveloped land, they know, I
Right.
mean, they can see it when they're developing it.
I
Right.
mean, you know,
And-
next to my music store, there was a bar, and it was a topless bar,
It's not like
Ooh,
this
ooh.
just turned commercial.
Where was that, Jerry?
of all things. When we moved in,
Explains a
we
lot.
rented it in 1962, it was just a blue collar bar. And they sold to a guy whose specialty was other kinds of bars, whether it be a loose finger bar or a bar that starts with a T.
Well, the other thing that I would
There's
point
nothing
out,
we could have done,
right,
you know what I'm saying?
and with regard to this, I would look at this and I'd say we did open this for public comment. We didn't receive any comments and there's no objections anywhere. So that opportunity is probably lost to that, lot owner at this point.
Yeah.
Donate top.
Is this also rentals?
rentals, sales, yeah, and
And repair.
service, yeah.
Rental sales and repair.
And we'll have, pretty much generators in stock from the smallest household generator all the way up to one of the power Parowan,
Wow.
too, we can get those.
And I'm assuming, I don't know this, I guess I'm asking, is
Yeah.
this, can I rent a chainsaw there?
You can't rent a chainsaw, you could buy a concrete saw, we don't do chainsaws.
Okay, got it.
We do Husqvarna concrete
You
saws.
can borrow mine, Larry.
No, I'm good, I was just curious as to.
You can, buy the small cement mixer for your house, grout machine, stuff like that.
Okay,
Small generator for your camper, heater for your garage, stuff like that. Then you were talking about water trucks for your fire, we rent and sell those too, water trucks with sprayers and everything.
there we go.
Pretty cool.
Awesome. I think it's a great thing for Parowan. I think we should
Any other
move forward.
comments, concerns?
Weston, you got the look.
I don't see any problem with it. It's commercial, it has been for a long time.
Mhm.
We're supposed to expect businesses there.
Yeah.
Plus, it's a busy street, so most businesses
It
do
looks like a
well.
business that would fit here, you know.
So, pardon me? No, we have sign code and
Yeah.
presumably you're gonna
I've
have
already
to,
checked in the
yeah,
sign code and all
you're gonna
that.
have to comply with the sign code.
Yeah, and we wasn't gonna go as big as what your code was, so.
Okay, well, there you go. We like that. So the only thing I personally see that I think we might consider writing in as a condition is wording something along the line of, hours of operation for the stated conditional use of construction, sales, service, and rentals are 8 to 5.
Okay, so I think now you're restricting any further business.
Yeah.
If
No,
you-
no.
if
I'm only restricting
This
construction,
business?
this type of business.
Okay,
For this type of business, construction, sales, rental sales and service at this location will be restricted to operating hours of 8 AM to 5 PM.
You call
If
that-
you're gonna put a restriction, I would say
We
6.
close at 5.
Yeah, I'm like, why are we putting a restriction on it?
Huh?
If they have,
That's okay
like,
with you?
I don't know,
Well, they're butting up against a residential district
yeah,
with, that's a 6-foot wall in the back, it's not really an 8-foot wall. We're not gonna really get into that, we're not gonna require them to build a higher wall and so on, but you're starting to get into things that I think are, one, too early in the morning, and secondly, family time and evening dinner. If, let's say Rasmussen moves, as they said, and somebody else decides they wanna compete with them, and they move in there, and they have a wide open conditional use permit, and they decide they're gonna compete by doing business from 6 AM to 6 PM.
But wouldn't a noise ordinance that's
Yeah.
on the books apply to
I
that?
do that,
That's
I know.
Yeah.
What your nose.
yeah,
Does it? I haven't looked,
that's what I would assume.
Yeah, I think we have something that says no construction before 7 AM,
Yeah.
right?
this
That's
isn't,
what
con- this
usually
isn't,
around
cons-
Salt Lake
right,
is.
but this isn't construction, so let's not confuse the two.
No.
Construction is construction work. Starting a piece of equipment at a rental sales business is not construction.
Maybe the code already says construction equipment. I don't know.
Do we wanna look?
Yeah, where's Dan when you need him?
We got
Judy knows
Judy.
where to find it.
We got
Judy
Judy.
Blue Eyes.
It probably just says construction because hammers are noisy too. It just says construction.
So by my
Any
stand,
vehicle
yeah,
noise.
by my,
Loud or offensive noise
Yeah.
after and before 7.
vehicle noise specifically,
Yeah, vehicle noise, loud speech, loud and offensive noise, or other
Yeah,
loud.
so I mean,
so this particular piece of code doesn't restrict, at least to the point that I'm suggesting. They're talking about 7 AM to 10 PM, and we're specifically talking about 8 AM to 5. So, if you lived there, right behind that business, I'm not saying all construction equipment is loud, but some of it can be.
Backup alarms are.
Somebody brings one in and says, my muffler's broken, listen to this at 7 AM. Fire it up, what are we listening to? So would you be okay with that? I find that to be really a sort of a minor, thing, but important.
I know I don't get a vote, but I say if it falls within the noise ordinance, it shouldn't be a problem.
Okay, well, at this
I mean,
point,
that's just my opinion.
well, unless there's other comments, I'll entertain a motion at this point.
Heather, you wanna give this a stab?
Okay, I make a motion that we approve a conditional use permit to allow construction, sales, and services
In rentals.
and rentals. It's not, I'm looking at the minutes. Sales, service, and rentals at 1141 West, 299 South, Suite C. And do we need to make any comment about removing the shipping container?
Yes,
Yes.
it's contingent upon.
Contingent,
Effective until.
not effective, and contingent upon the removal of the shipping container on the property.
2 shipping containers.
2. Oh, I only knew that there was 1. Okay, so,
And parcel number.
oh, parcel number.
A502.
Want me to read it to you, Heather, or show it to you?
I thought I had it here. Yeah. Oh, it's not on that one. Oh, A502-0005-0000. Oh, there it is, I see it now. I don't know why that's not showing up on here. Anyway, second?
Well, we have a motion on the table,
I have a second.
and can we repeat the motion before we vote on it?
Me repeat it or Judy repeat it?
Yeah, if you've captured it, please. Do I have a second?
Jerry, seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you very much. Thank you.
And welcome.
Yeah, welcome to Parowan.
Yeah.
Now go home. Oh. Okay.
All right, I need a motion regarding item 5 on the agenda.
Make a motion that we, not delay, that's the only word that's, thank you, table, number 5 on the agenda until May 1st? Is that what?
For this one, I would say pending the
Applicants?
pending the public hearing regarding this.
Oh, okay, 'cause we didn't
That
have
way
the
we-
public hearing.
They don't make the next one.
Okay.
Oh,
Do I have to say that, Judy, or did you? Okay, she got it.
Do I have a second?
it's Jerry, seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. The ayes have it.
Did they say why they wanted to delay that?
They may have told Dan, but he didn't share that with me. All right, our next item is Landscape Incentive Program and discussion on amendment to Parowan's Land Use Code. So I'm gonna just say it this way, unless Dan shows up and has a piece of code with him or wants to share with us which pieces of code specifically he would like modified, and Keith, unless you know, then it's my recommendation that we would table this. Because really our next step is to go put some code together, bring some code back, discuss it, make a recommendation to City Council to modify our land use code, which I think is not problematic. I think the discussion is moot at this point because we don't have enough details.
Mhm.
Agree.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I need a motion regarding that.
I make a motion that we table, item number 6 on the agenda, until a later date unless Dan shows up tonight.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Next item is the Subdivision Administrative Land Use Authority. And I'll just open, you discussed this, to a certain extent last week, and this was gonna be a public hearing. We weren't able to get it noticed in time, so that public hearing isn't gonna happen, so there won't be any sort of a vote, at this point, but just so that we're all on the same page, what we're really doing here is wanting to name the number of people on the body, what the body is gonna look like, and then the positions within the city that would fill those positions on the body. And if I understood correctly, watching the meeting last week, I think you folks decided that would be a 3-person panel because 2 doesn't work if there's a tie. And I think I heard that Dan would be let me back up, scratch Dan. We're gonna call that the Parowan City Zoning Administrator. And that's one of the hats that the city manager wears. And then I think I heard that another potential candidate for that panel was the Planning and Zoning Commission Chair. And I didn't hear any discussion about a third person or who that third person would be.
Was it planning and, was it zoning officer? No.
It's in my notes somewhere, I'm looking for it.
Wasn't it Keith?
It's actually in the minutes too.
I don't think it was a city engineer because it has to go to the engineer anyway.
No, I'm like, I read it in a minute.
Yeah, there was discussion about that, and I don't know where it landed.
Keith, what's your title?
Esquire. Are we searching the minutes? Is that what we're
Yeah,
checking?
I'd seen my notes, it was in the minutes. It was three people, you'd be one of them, Larry. Dan, and I think another
Scott?
member of this panel, as I remember it.
I'm sorry? Dan,
4 people then? Yeah.
Dan, Scott.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't
Oh.
remember us talking about
Dan,
Scott.
and one planning and zoning member to be the authoritative body.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
in parentheses, I have chairman, which would mean you, Larry.
yeah.
Dan, Keith, and one planning and zoning member to be the authoritative body, and then in quotes, I have chairman, so.
That's what I recall too.
You're hired.
Thank you.
My pleasure. That's why they pay you the big bucks.
Assistant zoning, what was it again? Assistant? Admin.
Authority, I think is what the terminology was.
Yeah.
Administrative land use authority.
Yeah, those were the 3. We didn't talk about titles, we talked more about the persons, the current persons.
Right, you understand the challenge with that, right?
Well, yeah,
Positions change.
that's why I just asked Keith
Yeah.
again, so I could write it down.
Right, so an example would be, so let's say Dan is no longer with us for some reason, and a new city manager is brought on board, that, and it ends up in that case that maybe that person doesn't wanna be the zoning administrator as well, and so we hire another zoning administrator. And so, you want the zoning administrator as that person, or do you want the city manager as one of those people? In this case, because we're talking about Dan, it's the same person,
Mhm.
but he's wearing 2 hats. And it's the same thing if it's planning and zoning chair, and the chair changes, then, you know,
The new chair.
the new chair
Yeah.
Takes that position.
takes that position.
Kinda makes
Mhm.
Yeah, I think we should just put titles down.
administrative.
Well, so the purpose of this discussion, of course, is to confirm what we're thinking at this point in time.
I wrote down city manager, chairman of planning and zoning, and assistant zoning administrator.
I think that works.
Heather, could you repeat that?
City manager, chairman of planning and zoning, and assistant zoning administrator.
Oh, yeah, okay.
If positions and titles change in the future, I mean, I think it'll be need to address at that time. Meaning that we don't have an assistant, we actually have, like, it expands,
Well, he might still have an assistant.
Yeah.
so just leave the assistant.
Mhm.
So if you think about it this way, Dan wearing his planning and zoning, or I'm sorry, his zoning administrator hat has an assistant zoning administrator. If that position were ever to be separated, or that hat was put somewhere else, the zoning administrator might also have an assistant. or not. And at that point in time, if we need to change it, as you said, we'd revisit this code again.
Yeah.
So once we make this decision, we'll ultimately be in a public hearing at the point in time that we put this into code. Right now, I believe the purpose of this is so that Hanson and Associates, that is rewriting our subdivision code, knows what direction we are heading, so that they can include those titles and positions in the new code. So at this point, if there's no further discussion, I recommend that we motion and...
Motion for a public hearing, or?
No, I think we motion to these three positions become our decision, and secondly, that the Administrative Land Use Authority body for subdivisions is a three-person body consisting of these three positions.
Okay. I make a motion that our Administrative Land Use Authority comprise of three persons, being City Manager, Chairman of Planning and Zoning Committee, and Assistant Zoning Administrator.
So the only thing I would change there at this point, I would move that subdivision way up to the front part of the sentence. So it's the Administrative Land Use Authority for subdivisions, because it's like a second Administrative Land Use Authority.
So say that again, you'd move subdivision,
It would be the Administrative Land Use Authority for subdivisions.
oh, okay. So Administrative Land Use Authority for subdivisions will comprise of three individuals consisting of City Manager, the Chairman of...
Planning and Zoning
City Manager,
the City Zoning Administrator.
I thought it was gonna be City Manager, that's why,
Yes,
that's
who
what
this-
we've been talking
wait,
about.
wait. Who is the Planning and Zoning Administrator?
Well, I understand that, I'm just saying, since we've been here discussing, we've been referring to City Manager. And that's why I was questioning about the position changing, being Assistant Zoning Administrator.
That's Mr. Naylor.
Correct, I know, but what I'm saying is that it was not the planning, it was not, understood our discussion here was that it wasn't the zoning administrator, was not the third person on there,
Planning and zoning chair.
So
and city manager.
City manager, assistant zoning administrator.
Correct, that's not what
Planning and
Larry
zoning
is,
chair.
that's
So
not
I
what
just-
Larry is saying.
yeah, so I just want to be clear. Are we saying it is the city manager, no matter who that city manager is, or will it be the zoning administrator for the city if and when such a...
What I was
Say it's the city manager, and then if that time,
if the job splits, then in the future, it becomes city manager, planning.
or where Dan's wearing two hats and there's no foreseeable future of that position, I would stick with city manager.
Okay, I'm a little uncomfortable with that. Just, one, it's the same person, so it's not that
Yeah.
it's a personnel issue. To me, it's a title issue.
Well, is that a part of his job description? The current city manager?
It is
Yes.
now.
Yeah.
Because he has accepted the position as a, zoning administrator.
But Parowan's never had a zoning administrator.
Yeah, they have,
They have?
yeah.
They have.
Cleve, that was his original job.
They combine the two.
Oh, I see,
Right.
interesting.
So, it
Molly,
remains...
is that too much for the city manager to handle?
Well, this is the so the question is do you not want the city because in the future, if it is split, do you want only the planning and zoning department and the planning and zoning committee involved, or do you want the city manager involved as well? I was thinking city manager.
See, I would think that you would not want the city manager involved if that's his primary position, is the city manager, because he's gonna, if he's only the city manager, what that means is he doesn't have to trouble himself with all the, land use code. So he's not gonna get into the details of subdivisions and so on. And by making the city manager named on that committee, he's gonna have to be actively involved, and he's actually gonna step all over the toes of the zoning administrator at that point.
So my question would be, if we were to go the route where you have zoning administrator, the chairman of planning and zoning, who is your third person gonna be? Because in all foresight, looking from where we are right now, if the job splits, that person's not gonna have an assistant. We're not gonna all of a sudden have a budget where we have a city manager with an assistant, a zoning administrator with an assistant.
Yeah. No, I agree with you on that, like, there's no budget for that.
So who would that third person be if we were to write it as as the zoning administrator, planning and zoning person? Who's the third person? Currently, yes, you can say it's the assistant, but in the again, it's just gonna be, in the future, would have to get changed again.
Well, I actually liked the concept where it was gonna be the, city zoning administrator, the planning and zoning chair, and there was discussion that we would use the city engineer.
And then I think the discussion with that was cost, involving an city engineer.
Did we capture that in the minutes? Is there something that captures that?
I thought that that was what we had discussed, that it is gonna eventually go to the city manager, but would that be incurring more cost to the city to include them? Is what I vaguely recall. You're shaking your head, does that sound like something that we said?
They don't serve for free.
We normally do.
Okay, well, there we go.
No,
So, so, to that point, I would say, when we go to the subdivision, when we go to Rosenberg and Associates with the subdivision, they're gonna look at it anyway, whether they're on that committee or not, and we're gonna pay them. So, it doesn't seem to me that there would be any incremental cost to them serving on the committee.
Depends on how long the meetings are, 'cause they'll charge by the hour.
Right. Yes, and of course, I
And how
think,
many meetings and,
well, there may be a scenario that we sit down with the engineer, and the engineer goes through and says, I've reviewed this as per my contract with the city, and here's my opinion, we need to fix A, B, C, and D. And we're not gonna argue with the engineer any more than we do now. The difference might be if in the future there's a city zoning administrator, he's actually incurring costs for the city, where if it's the city manager position, the city manager is in tune with that contract, so to speak.
I guess the way I'm seeing it right now is that any which way we choose those three people, in the future as the city grows, it's gonna have to be amended, it's gonna have to be changed. So as we sit right now, I don't know, I don't know why I'm still leaning towards city manager. I don't know if it really makes a difference.
You could put a slash in between.
Correct.
But then it would potentially need to be amended as the city grew if it became two people instead
If
of
it
one.
became two different positions, and then it would need to be, either way, whether we go zoning administrator, assistant zoning administrator, and commission, as we grow and things change, it's gonna have to probably be amended.
Mhm.
Because more than likely, if we grow to a full-time planning and administration position, splitting Dan's responsibilities, I don't know, I wouldn't think that there was an assistant in there, but maybe there is, I don't know. But that day,
So is the debate to just say city manager versus slash zoning
Speaking of the devil.
administrator?
Speaking of,
So, I mean, you could always put slash zoning administrator just to clarify that at a point in the future that could be adjusted if needed. But I mean, that's what I'm trying to kinda just
Yeah.
decide is the goal to solve the debate of one or the other or just one? Or could it just be slash zoning administrator? Because right now that is one person.
Mm-hmm.
well, it certainly could be. It sure leaves it open in the future to do it one way or another.
And it kind of
Apologize
shows
for
the
being late.
intention, because it's
Your ears must have been
Welcome,
burning, we were
'cause,
talking about you.
we were just tap dancing until you got here.
Yeah.
My wife was getting an award for,
Living with you?
master, yes. There's no amount of awards that could have to, put up with that, but
Good thing it's only part-time, right?
she's
Let
at
it
SUU. She is the communications master's student, of the year, 'cause she's
Wow.
graduating, and
Ah.
they gave her the award as the master's student of the year. So they had a big
Cool.
presentation, and sometimes you gotta also be a husband, so.
Yeah.
So Dan, we're presently discussing the, subdivision administrative land use
Land use authority.
committee. So it's been it's been determined, as far as I can tell, that we're at a three-person committee. And the discussion right now is really which three people are those. And you might be able to weigh in on that. I think we're settled in pretty close to, it's either the city manager or the, city zoning administrator, along with
I
the
think we
planning
would,
and zoning
probably the best
chair.
thing to do would be to say zoning administrator, because in the future, as the city evolves, it very well may be split back out from the role of also the city manager. As I wear two hats, it may be that it's a single hat and two separate hats in the future, and if we put that in the code, then we don't have to go back and address it. That's just my own personal thoughts. But as of now, the way things currently operate, it would be, we would probably be remiss to not have, not me, but this position on this role, just because you're so involved in all of the detail of leading up to this.
So if we put the planning zoning person, then obviously there's probably not gonna be an assistant planning zoning administrator like we have now.
Right.
What
So
I'd
then
be
who's the
assuming.
If we
You wouldn't
split it
wanna-
out, then,
Wouldn't
yeah,
wanna say assistant planning zoning administrator either as well,
right.
is where we wanna have it.
Cause if we split this out as a separate job, you're not gonna have both of those jobs
Yeah,
still, probably
Exactly.
there. That's my guess. So, somebody has, we threw out the idea of having the city engineer on there, but the city engineer is not a title, it's actually just a subcontracted company. So that's the challenge with putting city engineer. Now, we're gonna involve the city engineer in reviewing all this stuff and signing the plat. In fact, it's actually, a surveyor has to sign the plat, and there's a surveyor within the company of the city engineer that we hire that signs our plats. So we could say a member, either the city engineer or representative thereof or something like that, or we could leave them out and just have them give advice, I don't know. We could have the planning chairperson, I think would be maybe appropriate to put on there, or somebody from planning and zoning. You just wouldn't want the entire committee, because the entire committee can't approve the, what is it, the final plat, or is it the preliminary plat?
Both.
Okay, yeah.
So you just want to make a new motion?
I I think so.
Who were the others that have been discussed?
Well, the debate was between titling it city manager or zoning administrator.
So not three, though?
Yes, 3. So it was zoning administrator or city manager. We also discussed city manager / zoning administrator, and then planning and zoning chair.
Oh.
And the assistant.
Okay. And I think that we could set it up now and we could tweak it later as things change if we wanted to as well.
Yeah.
I mean,
'Cause right now, let's put names to that. It would be Keith, Larry, and I. And that totally works. That works right now.
Any further discussion?
No.
I'd entertain a motion.
Oh, my.
Okay, so am I going with my original or am I changing it?
Do,
I would go through original. I like the city manager, assistant zoning administrator, and planning and zoning chair as we have it now.
Yeah.
And if it needs to be amended later down the road, then amend it.
you wanna make the motion then, James?
Okay, I make a motion that the, where are we? I make a motion that the, administrative land use authority for subdivisions consist of 3 people containing the, or whatever, encompassing, whatever the word is, Judy, just put it in, city manager, chairman of planning and zoning committee, and the assistant zoning administrator.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, so just as a matter of discussion as we move along here, this won't become effective until our code is rewritten by Hanson and Associates. So while we've made the decision and we can go forward it won't go forward to city council until we get the body of code from Hanson and Associates.
Okay.
And just as a add-on to that, I have reached out to them and said, we need to rock and roll, let's do this. So, I haven't heard back, but I will be seeing them tomorrow at the conference I'm at, so I'm gonna get a commitment out of them.
So they replied to an email that said, yes, we're getting started, we're just about finished with our scrub, and will your people be ready for the 17th, which would have been tonight?
Was I on the email?
As far as I know, he replied to
'Cause
everybody.
I have been looking for that. It's possible. I get a lot of emails in a day.
I was watching for your reply.
It must have slipped through the
Yeah,
cracks.
well, that happens, but I think you owe them a call.
I was like, well, I'm glad you told me that, 'cause otherwise I'd been like, Mike, come on, buddy, you know, and he would have been like, I sent you an email then, so.
So it might not be a bad idea to call them and
Okay.
with an answer as to when we would first, and I don't mean we, this body, but the city, which might be planning and zoning and the council, be ready to hear from them.
Okay, sounds good. Not for that, for which? Which subdivision land use authority discussion?
Yeah, number 7.
For me?
I don't think.
Good, 'cause I'm really losing it.
Yeah. I don't think we're ready for the public hearing until we
No.
have the rest of the thing.
Yeah.
This is really just a recommendation to be able to tell Hanson and Associates what direction we're going.
Yeah.
Which is why they wanna talk to the city to find out how we wanna handle
And this thing
things
is
with
gonna,
subdivision code.
this was always gonna be something that they were gonna say, this is something you guys need to figure out.
Right.
So, the fact that we've got it now, at least a recommendation for planning and zoning, we're ready to rock and roll with them, so.
Yeah. So Judy, I think the answer is, we're not doing that unless something new develops. Okay, our next item, item 8 on the agenda, land use code definitions. So it wasn't clear to me whether there was a handout at the last meeting or not containing definitions. There wasn't, okay. So this handout captures all the definitions that we've either we've discussed, we'll say. Some of them we've retained, some of them we have, modified, and some of them we've we assume we're gonna adopt those, we're gonna recommend those to the city council. These recommendations won't be forthcoming until we have our internal ADU, external ADU, and short-term rental code drafts ready to recommend to the city council. So along with those will come this list of definitions and probably several others that we just haven't got to yet. So really this, I would consider this a living document. I've asked Judy to keep it updated. You'll notice that in red, that it talks about what meeting it was discussed in case there's ever any question, and what the outcome was, so that we can get back to that, like I say, because it's a living document, and at this point it was a little bit difficult to get back through and figure all these out again. Any questions about this? Okay, it's a handy one to keep with your,
Yeah,
bring it to the meeting
Mhm.
stuff as we work
Thanks very much.
through this.
This is handy.
Okay, the next item is our master transportation plan process discussion. And so I'm trying to understand where we're headed with this. So you probably all got the notice that on April 30th, which is I think a Tuesday night, is that right?
Yeah.
April 30th is an open house for the master transportation plan. And it's also been advertised as a public hearing. So the ultimate spot for the master transportation plan is, it'll be adopted as an appendix or a reference for the city's general plan. So it's a general plan revision, which means planning and zoning has to have a public hearing and regarding adding it to our general plan. And I'm not sure what order we're going in, if this is gonna be the public hearing on the 30th. I mean, we can finagle this. I don't wanna have public hearings just for the sake of having one.
We talked about, this is the reason for the April 30th meeting is it's pretty much tradition and a best practice when you're going to amend the general plan to the extent that we are like this, something that will affect property owners throughout the city, is that you have in the evening a dedicated meeting for that. You have maps out, people can come, they can review them, they can ask questions, they can draw on it and say, we think you should put your roads here or over there, not the way that you did it. They can have a chance to give which degree is it do you give them, Scott?
The third degree.
The third degree.
Practicing Mason.
Yes, give the third degree to the engineers. Why did you do it this way? What's the thinking with that? We'll even have some snacks here to help people have their blood sugar nice and good so that they're not angry. No, just a chance to meet with the people and answer all those questions. That's not intended to bypass any of our normal public hearings that we would have with this body. Molly, do you remember we talked about having this meeting, and then of course the very next step, assuming that there isn't any large revelations that come out of this, is to bring it here for presentation and then do a public hearing here. And I can't remember when we talked to McLean if we were talking about putting that on the May 1st agenda, which is the day after. I remember talking about it. I just don't remember what we decided.
We talked about putting it on the May 1st agenda.
You know what? If so, I would have left myself notes.
And also,
But I wondered if we talked if it was going to be too soon in case there was something that came out of the public.
did we have a timeline from him on one of our update emails from him?
You know what? Okay, this is what I did. I remember the conversation now. I wrote down in my notes May 15th to have a
So we
public
pushed it.
hearing here.
Okay.
So what we should do is have them come, it would be the next day, and have them present here to Planning Commission, not a hearing, and then have the hearing on the 15th. So it would go April 30th, public open house, May 1st, the next day, presentation to Planning Commission, and then 2 weeks later, a public hearing here and a vote.
So I guess the question I have, where I'm just a bit confused, and I think it's just me. So the open house on the 30th is touted as an open house, but it's also advertised as a public hearing. So I found that a bit confusing,
Where was that advertised as a public hearing?
where they're all advertised.
On the notice website. Okay, so that needs
Oh.
to be corrected.
Then that needs to be corrected, 'cause here it just says master plan open house. It doesn't talk, and just receive comments. Like it's not like this isn't advertised as a public hearing.
Okay, well, maybe I'm wrong. I'll go back and
No.
look. No? I mean.
It couldn't be, okay, maybe it could be. But
But
I'm
Yeah.
standing up here for a reason, so.
The revised notice just says, open house.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
when
So
was the revision?
he called
I
today,
think
I
it was
don't,
the very same day.
Oh, okay.
today to tell me when we go to league tomorrow. He's gonna have a big stack of posters that they've created for us to put out all over town and to,
Okay,
so I'll
great.
grab those tomorrow, bring them back and.
All right, well, that
put up.
clarifies things. Somehow I was under the impression that it was advertised as a public hearing, so. That makes it easy. So May 15th.
And I will get the planning commission, whatever deliverable they have. I want you guys to have enough time to review it and think about it, and so that you're ready for it. I mean, you'll have 2 weeks from the time they present it till the time there's a public hearing, but if they give us anything in the meantime, I'll share that. I know that they've gone very digital. Now they have a map that, you can pull up, and it's basically on one side is the existing streets, and on the other side is the new plan. And as you move, it moves around, you zoom in together, you zoom out together, and you can
Oh,
just see
great.
a side-by-side comparison.
Ah, that's,
So they're getting very technologically savvy on how they present this information.
Well, that's great. That's what I was really looking for. I'm going, at what point are we gonna have the opportunity to understand this plan?
It will look like a web page. I've seen the draft. In fact, he's like, don't share this with anybody, 'cause we're still working on it. And it has like 8 tabs. It has the active transportation plan as a tab, and it goes through all this information.
Great.
So
Oh, wow.
I'll get you that as soon as they say, okay, we checked it for typos. It's
Release
okay
the
to,
hound.
we don't want anybody to judge us for anything, so.
Tell them we need 2 days a page.
Okay, all right.
In case they're wondering. All right, any other discussion regarding that?
No, but we didn't approve any minutes from last,
Oh, where did,
What was that, Jim?
did I miss
we didn't
that?
approve any minutes,
It's not on the agenda.
yeah.
That could be one.
True. Just have to do it next time.
Well, I'd entertain a motion regarding the minutes from the meeting on April 3rd. Are there
Well, yeah,
a
Jerry,
motion
was
to
there
consider
anything?
them?
It's not on the agenda. We can just do it next time.
All right. That'll die. Thank you. All right, let's move right along, and we are at member reports.
Larry, did you table that other one to the next meeting, or just to later in the meeting?
We,
Yeah.
actually, I think there
We
was a
tabled
sentence
5 and
that said
6.
unless you showed up.
Unless you showed up.
Yeah, we
Yes.
That-
We are on a timeline on this one, otherwise I would say it doesn't matter. We have some residents that are like, we wanna do this quickly, can you please not
Okay.
stall at least? I mean, if you guys wanna table it because of discussion, that's one thing, but I would hate for it to be because I was not here.
Well, so my position on that was, while I looked at the minutes and I see the three items that you say need to be added to our code, we need to know, did you draft something to put those in, or do we need to draft something? Do you know where you want them to go?
So,
And if you do, share that and we'll move
okay,
on.
so has everybody seen what the 3 items are?
They're in the minutes on page 5.
So to answer your question, no, it has not been drafted.
Okay.
Most of this applies to new development, so therefore it would go in subdivision code so chapter 14 subdivision code, but if it applies to just any random person, then it would go in our land use code in the appropriate places.
This Title 15, so Title 15 and Title 14.
Yep, so number 2, no more than 50% of front and side yard landscaped area in new residential developments. That's clearly could go into subdivision chapter 14 code.
Which
And
ones? I'm sorry.
2 and 3. Well, actually, all 3 of them, because the first one says in new development as a clarifier at the end. It's just that what does that mean in new development? If somebody has a single parcel in town that's not built on, and they get a building permit, are they gonna be subject to this? Or is this only in new subdivisions? And I think that as long as I think if we put it in our subdivision code, they're gonna be fine. When I asked follow-up questions on this, I said, is that it, or are you gonna get into more detail? And she said, no, that's it. Some cities have gone, of course, you can guess, some cities have taken this and they've taken it several degrees further. These are like bare minimum. I think if we put this in our subdivision code, they would be happy, it would qualify us as a city, if we want to. I mean, we don't have to do this, it's just that if we don't do this, then our citizens can't participate in this program. We have been telling the state, as we've talked about in our water management plan, and as we've talked about in the groundwater management plan, that we are developing some conservation programs. I think that given the general political leanings of most people around here, that we would probably do a voluntary conservation plan rather than a heavy-handed conservation plan. These are, these are mandates. If we put them in, they're mandates, but for new development. So everybody knows if they're going to do something, then they have to do it. It's certainly not retroactive to all existing people, so. But anyways.
So just, do we wanna make another chapter for conservation?
It might be the best way to go about it.
And rather than try and force fit this into several pieces of code, I mean, if we have a conservation plan and...
I would think that we do have all of that in a water conservation, plan in, I think it's chapter 7. We already have this, we could add it there. It's just that I would think that we would want to at least have some language in our subdivision code that says that it's consistent with that plan, that it actually points back to it.
So
when we're going through the subdivision checklist, we don't miss it.
So if we put it in chapter 7 as part of the water conservation plan, and then we point back to it in the subdivision code.
Right. This says new subdivisions have to be compliant with the conservation plan, water conservation plan.
Title 7, blah, 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 blah.
That would be the best place, I think that'd be the best way to go about it, yeah. Cause then you're putting it where it's consistent, and we're not like creating something in chapter 14 that is in conflict with what's in chapter 7.
So as we do that, Title 7 or chapter 7, Title 7 is not land use code. So while we can write some language or put something in there, the only piece that we would bring to the council would be the piece that said...
That looks back at it.
Chapter 7.
Yeah.
You okay with
Correct.
that?
Yeah.
Any questions from any of the commission?
I think it'd probably still be a good, I think just from the city council's perspective, they're looking for planning commission to give them, to be experts in the field of land use, to also just have a recommendation of, we think this is a good idea, that you add some of this stuff into your land use code. By the way, the water board is actually making a recommendation. They heard it the other night and they tabled it. And I was like, oh, panic, like now that's gonna kick us back a month.
Mm-hmm.
And then I realized there's no reason why planning commission and water board can't concurrently work on this, because it's not like you're waiting for a recommendation for water board. It's just, do you want to alter the land use code that we're gonna be consistent with a conservation plan or not?
So I think you're saying the water board's gonna work in chapter 7?
Yeah, they're gonna, I wasn't there for that meeting, but, they're gonna review, they wanted to review it for a month and then come with a recommendation to city council, when their next meeting is.
Dave Burton called me before this meeting and said that they didn't do anything in water board, because they didn't have enough people.
They talked about it.
Did they?
I know
He said they didn't vote or they didn't do something.
I know they talked about it, and he said, I'm not sure why we didn't vote on it, 'cause Dave was the one presenting it to them, and they just wanted to think about it.
Oh, okay. Anyways, so I think at this point, I'd just accept a motion that we, as a commission, agree that we need to point to the water conservation plan that's gonna be inserted into, Title VII. And then, if we do that and it's approved, then I'll make a run at writing that code and getting it plugged in, and I'll bring a draft back.
In chapter 14?
Hmm?
In chapter 14?
In chapter 14, and I'll take a look at chapter 7. And
Well,
I'd rather
let me work on that and get something to the water board. The only reason I'm saying that is we may want to consider, we want to make sure that we amend our chapter 7 conservation plan with anything else that has also changed. That'll go straight to city council anyways. I think what I'm thinking might be good is to bring them actual language that they can read, review, and then vote on in that meeting. You're more than welcome to help me. I'm just saying it may be slightly bigger than the scope of these 3 things in that meeting. I just want to make sure, 'cause
Okay.
water, they're introducing water bills all the time. They probably introduce some more things. So I just want to kind of review that. I haven't read it for a good year probably.
So if I'm understanding that, then right now, all you need us to do is get a sentence or whatever it takes to
Yep.
point back to chapter 7,
Chapter 7, not Title 7?
Title 7, sorry, it is Title.
Okay. So,
If you hold off for 2 seconds, I'll tell you the chapter and verse, but maybe you don't. Maybe it doesn't matter for your motion. Would you like to include that in?
Well, I'll figure out where it needs
Okay.
to go. If you wanna tell me.
Because there's already a section, because we already have that plan there.
Yeah, tell me what it is and I'll,
Perfect.
just so I know and save me some time.
Water Management Conservation Plan, 7.12.
Okay.
so, we're making a motion to amend?
No, actually, do we even need a motion to do
Yeah.
this? I think we're just gonna draft a piece of code.
Yeah.
So I'll bring a piece of code back to the next meeting.
Okay.
Very good. All right, let's move on to member reports, and let's start with Dan.
Can you end with me?
Yes. We'll go to the other end of the table.
I have nothing to report. I'm just happy to be here.
Thank you.
I have nothing.
I have nothing except I will not be at the meeting on May 1st. And I apologize.
Okay, well, that brings me to, we're gonna go to Heather first.
I have nothing.
Nothing. Weston? Nothing. All right. Well, that was pretty straightforward. So before we get too far, I just would like Troy Hoyt to stand up for a minute. Troy Hoyt is our new alternate for planning and zoning. Welcome. We look forward to working with you and getting involved. Now, just going forward, so we all know, I've asked the alternates to attend these meetings. We're a fairly dynamic group, and it's really hard from time to time when we have members that don't show up. Normally that's announced, but if somebody's late, it gets pretty scary as to whether we're gonna have a quorum or not. So I've asked the alternates to show up so we can sit in. And so I'd ask members, if you come in 10 minutes late or in the middle of a discussion, please don't come take your chair. The alternate is in, and you're out for that meeting.
I almost didn't make
And-
it today.
And that way we won't do musical chairs in the middle of a meeting.
So Troy should have been sitting in my seat, and
And you can sit here next
Yeah.
meeting.
You're a lawyer, right?
He,
I was-
His shoes aren't quite that big, Dan.
That's not how it works, Scott. No,
Okay.
you're always late.
I'm always early.
The meeting starts at 6.
All right, the next item in city council in this last one, city manager introduced the, intent of the city to address short-term rental code and to continue working on, code for IADUs, which we've been doing for some time. That said, that puts applications for short-term rentals on hold for 6 months while we develop that code. So, we wanna move along with that. So my plan for the next meeting, will be to bring some more definitions and potentially some draft code in to consider, as we move through that process.
Do we have an idea of what kind of restrictions or what other cities have done that we can,
I have lots of ideas to share that I've heard of other cities. I have a few opinions, but I'm at these things that I go to with other city managers and things, you know, we sit in round tables and share stuff. I've got a lot of stuff to share that's just ideas, and obviously that's just one perspective.
So what I would hope, the process for researching these really does include going and looking at other cities' codes. And there's lots of places to go. There's lots of cities in Utah that have short-term rental code already. There's other towns in other states. I would recommend that you go look there. So that the intent of the first drafts of the code is, it's gonna be pretty rough, and it's gonna be open for discussion. So if you have ideas on how to do, I don't know, let's say we wanna limit the number of short-term rentals. If you stumble across a method to do that, let's talk about it. I'm available to talk offline if somebody wants to call me and just, you know, talk through something. I've got some ideas that I'll put into the draft, and just to save people trouble, part of what I'll probably write into the short-term rental business is something that limits the number of short-term rentals or the distance that short-term rentals can be from hotels, motels, and places that are in the business of providing lodging for travelers on a larger scale basis, and potentially limit the distance that they are from each other within the city. So pick a number, pick a block, you know, it can't be, you know, you can have one per block or something like that. And that being written in, of course, would take us somewhere that says, now that means, so how are you gonna prioritize that? First come, first serve, you're gonna have a waiting list. What happens when the property changes hands, those sorts of things. So I'll draft up some concepts there, and like we do all the time, I don't like that, you don't like this, we'll work through it. There'll be some pretty good discussion, I expect. But please, go out and look and come armed with some ideas and concepts, not just on short-term rentals, but also external ADUs. You can imagine where that goes. What zones would we allow those in? Are we gonna allow them at all? How big can they be in relation to the primary house? And what is the primary house when you build an ADU? Do they need to be owner occupied? All that kind of stuff. Okay,
Dan?
that's it for me.
I just wanted to make you aware of some of the things that are on the docket. We have, 2, large lots within an existing subdivision that are interested in dividing their lot. Our code prohibits a subdivision within a subdivision, but it does allow an amendment to a subdivision, a vacate and amendment. And so they've been working, at least the one, I've already received a plot. There's some question on the hillside development slope standards, which we're gonna look at. And the other one, I've given them I've already told them kinda how to go about it. We'll see whether they both come in. One would have been ready for tonight, but they pressed the pause button on it due to some family stuff, so that should be coming back fairly soon. If you remember, we approved the commercial subdivision where the hotel and Ace Hardware and things are being built. That was a conditional approval upon the storm drain getting solved. We have been working on that this entire time. It got very complex, with UDOT and so forth. I think we've finally broken free with a forward progress just this last week.
For you.
Fingers crossed, because I really didn't wanna be standing in between them and opening their doors, but we would need to do that. So I think that we're getting that figured out. In fact, you and I need to have a talk, 'cause all of this is right down by your business, but I think we've come to a good solution. Federal Highways, notified UDOT that our original plan had some issues with it, allowing longitudinal utilities within the right-of-way, long story. But I think we finally got to a good place with that, so I just wanted to give you an update on that. We do have a couple of zone changes that are being looked at, and I've been recently reviewing the code, the state code, city code, and our process, and updating that application form and process. Basically, it says that there has to be a public hearing. We have to notify the property owners who are impacted, and that means those whose properties is going to be changed. Now, the reason why the city would be doing that notification is if we wanted to rezone an area involving a bunch of property owners. If a single property owner approaches us and wants to do it, we say, okay, great, we need to know your reasonings, your justification. We hold a public hearing in this meeting and look at the plan, and this body hears that and does that. We do not have to notice all of the property owners around that. Specifically, the state code says that it is not required. Some cities make it a requirement. It's been a past practice, but it's actually not anywhere in our code. So I amended the application form to be consistent with our code, and we'll still, as a way to notify neighbors, just as a courtesy, we'll go put the big yellow sign up on the property that says, this is being considered, these are the dates of the public hearings if you wanna come in and hear about it and speak to it. But anyways, just so you know, there's a couple of properties that, there's a reason why I looked really hard at it recently. One was the subdivision that presented last time in Planning Commission, the Wheeler subdivision, and the other one is, somebody by the name of Reese. I think there's a relation, so. We would probably either have, our Commissioner Reese be silent on that one, or maybe that'd be a good day for an alternate to sit on when a decision is made. But anyways, those things are coming down the pipe. I just wanted you to know.
Can I ask Dan 2 questions?
You bet.
The, just out of curiosity, the hotel has seemed to be stopped in construction. I haven't noticed it's.
No, they get to a point where everything moves internal, and you just
So
don't
it's not
see
the
a lot.
storm drain and that kind of thing
No.
was not an issue? Okay.
No,
And-
they've been moving forward.
And the HVAC even as we speak.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, good.
Davis's truck is out there, so.
Oh, good.
Yeah, yeah.
And then the property, off of it's gonna be south of Maverick, that little, right off the, is that something, they're clearing and?
Yeah, so they have a business a building permit from the county and are moving forward with a building permit. That's still county.
Oh, that wasn't a property that was?
It's part of the annexation, which has not finished yet. Oh, I'm glad you brought that up, Heather. Part of getting this stupid storm drain thing done will allow us to finally move forward on the annexation, vote, because that has stalled because the annexation agreement we were stuck on language of that, because at the last minute, when I said it got complicated, UDOT said, hang on a second, the Maverick proposal is going to require an alteration to the northbound off-ramp on the other side of the freeway, close to town, which then messed with the storm drain design.
Oh.
So they said, we can't approve this storm drain design for the hotel Ace Hardware thing until Maverick, we know their plans, and then it all got weird. And so we couldn't finish the annexation agreement because the annexation agreement details what improvements that they're gonna have to do as part of their annexation. And they weren't, the four parties weren't in agreement. City, UDOT, commercial subdivision, and Maverick, we could not all get on the same page. And I said, we can't move this annexation forward until we get on the same page. So that's why that stalled. But in the meantime, that other little triangle got a building permit from the county and is moving forward.
Okay.
So when they annex, they'll be annexed mid-building project, and it's an equipment,
Yeah,
Equipment
you say,
sales
what are
and-
they?
yes,
it's an
sales and
equipment
rentals.
dealership.
Right.
They're
got
going
signage
to
up there.
be doing it, and I don't know that it's confirmed, so I don't wanna say the dealership, name, but it will be an equipment sales and, I think just sales. I don't think they'll do any, I think it's just purely sales, like a new dealership. They probably do parts and stuff like that, but, so that'll be on the docket
Okay.
for the city council to vote on the annexation.
Thank you, I was just curious.
Like I could keep going, and the other annexation went through the city council. So this is a good update. The other annexation, there's a few that are in process. There is an annexation just to the east of the Ace Hardware. They went through the county process and finally got done with their notices. They came with a petition it starts at the city council, just for the city to consider it. Then it goes to legal review. So, that's right, Scott, we're gonna spend a minute on that because the city council did approve the petition. Once it goes through legal review, Cali does some notices to all the surrounding property owners, that is in law. And then it'll come here for public hearing once we have, more information, what zone they're requesting and all of that minutia. And we'll be looking at seeing how it complies with the traffic master
So this is the Ace Hardware property?
This is east, closer. It's between the RV park
Yeah,
and Ace Hardware. It's filling in a hole.
I see.
That's
Okay.
30 acres.
Yeah, it's 30 acres.
Does it butt up to the back side of Terrible's? That little piece?
Yeah, the Ace Hardware is the east side of that. It'll basically connect 200 north to the freeway and the commercial subdivision that includes Ace Hardware and the Terrible's and the RV park.
Mhm.
It'll fill that donut hole.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah.
So, is that it then?
That's it.
I just wanna go back to the noticing requirements. So while I fully subscribe to what you were discussing with regards to who we notice and how we notice, I think we should be really careful as a city because rezones and things can get really touchy if you've bought into a subdivision, a big subdivision, and you're in rural estates, and all of a sudden we change it to R1 and now you can have much smaller lots. 'Cause what you're dealing with is people that have bought into rural estates because they like the lot size and the low density. And to come in later and not notice people and start carving lots up into quarter-acre lots, to me, is something we should be really transparent about so that people have a chance to come in and speak up. 'Cause we're dealing with developers, and I get that. And I think it's important that the public have a chance to weigh in and understand what's going on around them.
Well, and sometimes they're developers and sometimes it's a single property owner, mom and pop.
Right.
But the question is I guess to put back onto you, to answer back to you, Larry, do you want to actually make it a city requirement, put it in a code that says that we do have to notify neighbors within so many feet? Some cities have that as a requirement. The state code allows us to if we would like to.
Yeah, I like it. I'm not, I can't make the decision. I know how I would vote if that came up to a vote, but if we're gonna work on that, I think it would be something we'd wanna hear from the city council. I mean, they're the ones that really get held accountable for transparency. And, you know, we sit back here and make some decisions and make recommendations, but the city council is, and then the mayor and the city manager get held accountable for those decisions once they're implemented.
And it's the age-old property rights versus transparency of what's changing and how does it affect neighbors, and it's a difficult thing.
Yeah. Well, and right now, we all know that the trend is to increase density.
Mhm.
So I mean, if you came in and bought a half-acre lot, you know, hang on, because as soon as we allow some ADUs here and there, you know, then the density's gonna change in the neighborhoods. Anyway, that's my 2 cents worth. Anything else? Dan, thanks for the update. I especially appreciate that, getting a heads up on what's
And
coming down the
congratulations to your wife, will you
Oh.
tell her?
I will.
That's very cool.
I know you guys hate being blindsided with help, so I try to give you lead time. That's my new goal. Talk less in the meetings and give you more lead time.
The other thing I'd really like to see, when we get an application, I'd like to see the dimensions on the plot plan.
Dimensions of what, Larry?
Just the dimensions, so typically an applicant will come in and, you know, the requirement in city code is a fully dimensioned,
Yeah,
Yeah.
plat or plot plan.
yeah.
And some of the things that we're actually getting are little scribbles on paper, and they're not fully dimensioned by any means, and I'm not going anywhere with the tape measure. All right, there's one final motion to be made.
I make a motion that we adjourn.
I second.
Do I have a second? I have a second. All right, the motion is to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any
Aye.
nays? Aye. The ayes have it. Thank you, everybody.
So this whole thing, actually, let me show you better. So this is based on this is the LiDAR, these were the maps that they were going to adopt in 2009, but never did. And what they did is they essentially put a